You know, in like any of these movies where there's really obvious signs that something is very dreadfully wrong, about 5 minutes into any one of those scenarios, I'd just be like, screw you guys, I'm gonna. You know how much trouble I would save by doing that? So in case you guys didn't know, I'm a huge fan of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead movies. Particularly, my favorite has always been the second one. I just love the comedy. You got all the great one-liners in there. Army of Darkness, a lot of fun. But of course, I still love The Evil Dead, the original. And it's a classic. And I was very concerned about it being remade. Now, the trailers really didn't sway me into thinking that this movie was going to add anything to the original or put any new spin on it. It just kind of looked like standard horror fare. In fact, it really bared no resemblance to, you know, the Evil Dead movies, really based on the trailer. It just looked like a movie with a bunch of kids, you know, in a cabin in the woods, which is like now a standard kind of horror scenario. So I don't know why they even were bothering calling it a remake and not just making it something different. But I have to say that I actually wound up enjoying this movie a lot. I really liked it. I purposely chose not to watch The Evil Dead, the original, you know, within the months preceding this movie coming out, just so I didn't, you know, sit there comparing point by point. But I mean, I've seen it a bunch of times, so there was that, you know, the fun element, like, oh, are they going to do that next? This movie, it does, I think, actually a pretty good job of I guess, putting, you know, the Evil Dead in modern cinema, because, there's a point in this movie, where there's, and especially if you've seen the original, you know that a very grotesque part is coming up, and I look over to my friend, I'm like, wait, this isn't the 80s. And I slowly started to realize that, for however disturbing the original is, it's still different to see things much more realistic looking to what they would actually be like as far as gore goes. And that's, I think, a very strong suit of this movie, because it's not just, you know, blood and guts everywhere. I mean, it is, but it really takes its focus on like, making pressure points of like, physical pain, of things that are just so, you just imagine that happening to you in your mind, and they really focus on it, on like the specific, you know, actions and reactions of bodily damage that is just so disturbing that I think is one of the great additions to this movie from the original. When you're watching the original, there's kind of the dichotomy of like, wow, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, and then on the other hand, oh my god, this is so disturbing, this complete disregard for humanity. And that's what makes it such a crazy experience of a movie, and I think that's done in a somewhat different way here. They kind of distribute, like, the classic scenes, and all that good stuff, like, throughout different characters and slightly different scenarios, which is nice, because there's no Ash. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh man, it's not going to be Evil Dead without Ash. But it was definitely a good choice. I think, really, this one really captures the atmosphere very, very well. It is very disturbing at times, I mean, just to be honest. And really, it is just so, and it really does disturb you. I mean, they are basically just destroying people. Just absolutely ripping. That is what you're watching. You're watching people just have themselves ripped apart in, like, every imaginable way, and it is so much fun to watch. Now, it doesn't necessarily handle the comedy or the over-the-topness as well as the originals do, but I think in other aspects, it handles them almost just as well, but to their own purpose. I mean, I felt like, you know, I was back, you know, when I was in 7th grade and was obsessed with the Evil Dead movies. I love them. I still love them. They're still awesome, and this movie's pretty damn good, too. I think I'll give it, you know, so I think I'll give it an 8, you know, 8.5 out of 10. There you have it. Evil Dead doesn't tread too harshly on the original, makes some new ground of its own, but overall just serves to be a fun experience that I think should be enjoyed if you're into these types of movies. You know, if I've learned anything from the Evil Dead movies at large, other than, you know, just don't go anywhere the fuck near a cabin, Duct tape fixes just about everything. You could get your, like, head cut off, and these people would just be like, dude, get the duct tape, man! 5-second rule!